Welcome back to Chemistry Lab. Today's experiment, the many colors of copper. This is one of the most fun labs we have in the curriculum. We take copper metal and we convert it to different forms of copper and then get the copper metal back at the end. You're introduced to a lot of different laboratory techniques and you get to practice your equation writing along the way. So let's look at what you'll be doing. You're going to start with a piece of copper wire, just plain old regular copper wire, and the first step is to dissolve this copper wire in nitric acid, concentrated nitric acid. It's very important that this first step be done in the hood. We've got several hoods set up in the lab, and the acid will be set up in there, and you will be generating some toxic fumes, these brown toxic fumes, but they'll be in the hood. So you pour the nitric acid while it's in the hood, leave it in the hood while it's producing these brown fumes. When it is finished producing brown fumes and the copper appears to have dissolved, the next step is to add water to it. Once you add water to it, you are free to bring it back out in the lab and work with it. So that first step involves the conversion of copper to copper nitrate. Copper 2 nitrate specifically. If you look in your lab manual, the reaction for this one is given on the first page. Now, after you generate the copper 2 nitrate solution, you're going to chill the solution and add sodium hydroxide to it to produce copper 2 hydroxide. This is a gelatinous blue compound. The reaction for this can be found if you look carefully at the headings in your lab manual. The words contain the ingredients of this reaction and give you an idea of how to write that chemical reaction. When you have this compound, the next step is to make sure that the solution is basic by taking some of your red litmus paper and a stirring rod, touch some of that solution to the pH paper to see that it turns blue. It needs to be basic. Then you will heat this solution with a Bunsen burner, and you will heat the solution to drive water out of this compound to generate copper 2 hydroxide, which is a dark compound. Now you need to stir the solution while you are heating it, and when all of the blue compound seems to have disappeared, you can remove the heat from the system and let this begin to cool. As it cools, the copper 2 hydroxide will settle. And after it is settled to at least half of the volume, you can begin to pour off some of the excess liquid on the surface. I recommend pouring that off into another beaker. And if you look at the picture here of, you can put a stirring rod across the beaker and allow the solution to come down that's a good technique for pouring. Once you've reduced the volume and you still have the solid copper 2 oxide in the beaker, you are going to add hydrochloric acid to this to generate copper 2 chloride. At that point, you can add aluminum pellets to this solution, and that will generate your copper metal again. Be mindful that when you add the aluminum pellets to this, you actually have two reactions going on at once. The aluminum is reacting with the excess acid in solution to produce some hydrogen gas, so you should see some bubbles. But the aluminum is also reacting with the copper chloride in the solution to generate your copper metal. So your reaction is finished when the color of the copper 2 chloride has disappeared. That's an indication that you've got your solid copper back. Once you have copper metal and you no longer have color in the solution, you can filter the solution and then clean up the aluminum pellets, get the last of the copper off the aluminum pellets by using a little bit of ethanol to do that. And then you will be able to dry this and weigh it out. And you can compare the mass of the copper that you got here with the mass of the copper that you started with. It's a fun lab. Have a good one.